There we go for the the November 14th TST. Let's see. So we've got a couple collaborator proposals. So I wanted to start with those. Um, One of them I think is going to be easy because it's someone that we've already started working with, or at least Gopi has, from Linker Networks. Gopi, I didn't when Bill went through the list of names, I didn't collect all of them. Are you there?
Yes, yes, I'm here.
Yeah, could you speak to what this is about?
Yeah, so uh, there are a couple of reasons we're proceeding with this. One of the one of the main drivers of us working with Linker Networks is to be able to create a hybrid um, Kubernetes VM-based cluster managed with OpenStack for for the Cord platform. As a part of that effort, we basically did a little bit of research and found a few implementations that will allow us to have a hybrid platform. And one of the implementations was Linker Network. So we reached out to them, and they were more than happy to work with us. Incidentally, they also were planning to become a part of the ONF members group, and they put this proposal together. So it kind of came together pretty well. Um, the specific details of the implementation architecture, I can talk about that if you like. But the summary is that we are working together on an OVS based overlay network that will be shared by VMs as well as containers managed with Kubernetes. And this will allow us to have a single overlay network on which VNFs can communicate. Um, that is the plan. There are several variants of this that have come up. Basically, the VMs being managed by Kubernetes without OpenStack and a bunch of stuff. So there are a few variants. So this is moving into pretty complex territory, but this is basically the gist of the work that we have been doing with Linker Networks over the last month or so.
That's great. So this seems like an obvious positive decision. Does anyone else have anything to add to it? Any concerns that we should relay to them? So you met with their CEO, I believe, right, at Cord Build?
There are two people from Linker Networks. One was HW and the other one was John Lynn. I don't think they are in the senior staff of that company. They were basically the people I'm directly working with implementing this. We also have Jono from our side working, but I don't think the CEO attended the
I maybe got it wrong. I was thinking he was a pretty senior guy, one of the maybe even
Oh,
co.
that was from 99 Cloud.
Oh,
I
okay.
think that,
My bad.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no worries. That's a different project. Yeah.
Right, right. I confused those two guys. Um, okay, so any concerns, anything that we should relay to them to help them be more effective? Okay, so hearing no objection, let's admit them as a contributor.
Hey, this is David. I'll follow up with them about that.
Thank you. So the second proposal is a switching fabric. So we got a little bit of uh, difference of opinion about the state of this one. I don't know if someone, Saurav, have you had a chance to look at it?
Is this from Kalum?
Yeah, the one from Kalum.
No, I haven't had a chance to look at it.
Okay.
I thought the email list was pretty consistent that we'd love to have them integrate, but what they've talked about is not a contribution. It's just a product demonstration.
Correct.
And a contribution would be actually modifying Cord to be more plug and playable with different fabrics, and then they could integrate their one fabric. but we'd also have to have it so it's plug and playable with the existing leaf spine fabric, the trellis.
So does the proposal actually talk about what they will do, or not?
It talks about what the product has.
It talks about the product. That
Well-
will help us, right?
So the proposal has some stuff in it, but it's fairly generic, and it is mostly about their product. So I'd like.
Our template actually say, doesn't our template actually ask
does,
for
but-
what are you actually doing, right?
It does,
And
what contribution you're making, what are the resources, people don't necessarily stick to the template.
I thought it basically said we're going to integrate our product into Cord, but it didn't indicate that they were going to do it in a way that others could reproduce it, or that again, that it's pluggable.
Well, do we want to invite them to talk to us and we can?
yes.
Yeah, I think we're gonna need to do that. If we could formulate a way of putting it to them or anyone like this, that what we would like to see them do is integrate their product of that might be the first step with Cord in a way that is reproducible with the Cord reference implementation. You could choose their product or one of the other ones that we already have included. And then recognizing that their product has additional capabilities and features, start to contribute back the extensions to the current architecture and implementation that would help us realize those advantages. And then, we all get involved in that so as to make it as general purpose and so on as plug and play as possible.
Yeah, so I'm looking at their picture right now in the proposal, and it says, okay, it does show a fabric. It does show virtual switches in the servers, and then it shows Column fabric controller servers,
And they're
10%
using-
redundancy. It's not clear why ONOS is there then in this picture.
Yeah, so I think
They're using,
I
they're using
suspect.
P4 enabled white box switches
Right,
to
but,
control leaf spine, what looks like a leaf spine fabric.
okay, but so
Well,
they're
this-
using their own controllers, right? I'm assuming the Column fabric controller servers.
It's unclear whether it's integration with ONOS. But again, I'm okay with them saying they're not using ONOS, but it has to be somehow pluggable like fabric as a service.
But they were saying that their ONOS could interface with their controllers. So I don't quite know
Controllers.
what the separation of concerns is there, but
So what it seems like is I think we need to have them
Have a
come and give a presentation and answer questions on the TST call.
Yep, I would agree with that.
Is next week an option just for Thanksgiving? Are we skipping or?
I'm out next week.
A lot of people are out,
Yeah.
maybe the week after.
Yeah, why don't we go ahead and wait a week just to make sure we get a pretty full house, because this is this could be really interesting if it's done right.
I can set a little bit of context here. They have, I think the person with most information here is Tom Tofik. So the next time we discuss this, I think we should also invite Tom to attend this call. But essentially, they came and demonstrated their software architecture a couple of times at the ONF office. I mostly was interested in how because they were talking about containerized VNFs as well. I was trying to see what sort of overlay networks they were using. So that was my interest. But in general, this proposal stems from the fact that they want to find ways to work with ONF. And if that means they need to change the proposal, I think they'll be open to it. But I think Tom should definitely be a part of this conversation.
Tom is definitely on the thread. I'll include him when I reach back out to them.
Can you give them some feedback? It's like, what are the things we're looking for and how they're going to bring value to the community?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, what we want to avoid is that they've demonstrated from their point of view how to use their fabric instead of what the reference implementation does, but it's not consistent, and it's a one-off. We want to avoid the one-off, I guess. We want it to be a plug-and-play alternative, but integrated deeply enough that we can choose our options. And then the next stage is, I'm going to guess they have additional capabilities they'd like us to take advantage of. Help us nudge the core of what Cord is about to accommodate that.
For sure. And that it provides value to the project as a whole.
Right, exactly.
Hey, Larry,
that always gets as a contentious issue, speaking as a vendor, right? I'm happy to, make it plug and playable, but if you're asking me to, contribute all my added value back to the open source, that's where it gets sticky.
No. All right. So thanks for raising that point. That's not what I meant. If there is a feature that we can't express, I'm not asking them to reveal their feature. I'm asking them to help us craft interfaces and abstractions and models
Okay.
such that that feature is exploitable.
Okay.
I think this is a good example too of a company, as we get into Cord certified, we've got our switches and servers and, we'll eventually have some VNFs. This may be a good one that fits into a fabric category.
That's good. Yeah. Help us craft what it means to be Cord certified. Yeah.
Okay, I'll reach out today. I'll suggest the TST meeting after Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Sounds good. Any other feedback? If you have any other feedback, get it to David to pass along. Okay. Moving along, we have the M-Cord and E-Cord integration efforts. And I'd like to talk, I think, mostly about M-Cord. My understanding, and someone should correct me, is that E-Cord is in pretty good shape, and it's actually a baseline is there, and most of the work is how to make it better. For example, offering both a fast path and slow path is an example of that. Is there more, are there concerns about the E-Cord integration effort that we need to talk through? Otherwise, I'd like to turn our attention to M-Cord.
I think that's pretty accurate.
Okay, so on the M-Cord front, there's a document which you, and this is an M-Cord document. It's M-Cord specific, but I'd like broader across Cord, especially anyone involved in the platform, to don't view this as a narrow M-Cord problem. This is how do we produce a Cord release that includes the M-Cord profile in it. And so contributions to that are very welcome. So this document has collected, this is the target set of services. This is the target service graph. There are some things I would call outside of, they're emulations of the eNode B, for example. So there will be things that are arguably outside of the Cord pod, but necessary to test. Then there's a
Larry, are you sharing your screen by chance?
Oh, darn it, not very well. This whole time, I always fall down when it comes to sharing my screen.
Yeah, I can see it now. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. All right, so we've got a set of services, a list. We have what the service graph looks like, and again, I was pointing out that pieces of it live outside of the pod, but they are the drivers, the emulated eNode B. So in one respect, I don't know how to quite think about it. It's part of the scaffolding for the release, but it's not technically included in the release. There's a set of VMs and networks and so on, and there's a bunch of information about installation. So in following this, it seems that there are still uncertainty as to exactly what gets included. There are some variables that I'd like to figure out. We need to lock down because we just don't have a lot of time to include options. We need to get one configuration. So I think the service graph is reasonably well defined from the topmost level. My concern is, do we have all the pieces, the VNFs that plug into this, have those decisions been settled? Ping Ping, if you maybe talk about it, and the other folks on the integration swarm, which I believe are Sopan and Andy, just speak to your understanding so that we can try to work through this if we can.
Yeah, and sorry, Larry, even before well, maybe it's the same thing over VNF, not really, maybe, I don't know. So I still didn't understand even before that what's the plan, what's the combination of the EPC we're gonna give with the rent that we are gonna give, if it's emulated in software, if you can attach some hardware. It's still not clear to me concretely what the users will have.
Yeah, all right. So that's it, right. That's part of my ask here is, can we nail down what each one of these pieces is very precisely so that everyone on the swarm understand, and everyone that could help contribute to it understands what needs to be done. So it's sort of laid out a little bit in the configuration information, and I'm going to have trouble finding exactly what I'm looking for. It's somewhere down here. Well, I'm having trouble finding what I'm looking for here. So there is so there are a couple emulators. My understanding it is for the eNode B, and have we picked an answer? So there's a Spirent scenario, I think is what is the right way to phrase it.
The Spirent one is just one example. So far, we haven't put the Cord part inside. Right now, it's just the M Cord. So when we build the Cord part for Cord build for I and Monjun, just write down what we need to do for the M Cord part. So far, this is just the whole file is just the M Cord part. We haven't put the platform and those standard infrastructure inside.
So what does it mean to be it's an M-Cord pod as opposed to it's a Cord pod? What does that imply?
M-Cord, we haven't talked about based on Cord pod, you just bring up M-Cord profile. So we just start from the M-Cord profile. We haven't introduced M-Cord is based on Cord, and for Cord, what you should do, and little different with Pod. What's the software you should bring up, like the M-Cord service profile. So right now we just start from the M-Cord service profile, that part. We only introduce the M-Cord services. We haven't introduced the platform and the relation between the platform and M-Cord.
All right, so go ahead.
Sorry, Pimpin, can I ask you a question? Because I'm very ignorant really on the M field. So starting like from the basic, if in your mind, right, let's say the release comes out in December with M-Cord, right? What do I need besides, in terms of hardware, besides what's required for a traditional pod? So I have the servers, I have the fabric, right? Is there any special equipment that I need as a user that I can buy?
No special requirement. Just in M-Cord, we need to use, if we use a Spirent emulator, we don't need to buy any special hardware. But if you want to use the real phone to give a test, you need to buy your eNode B or RH. On that part.
Okay.
That's the only difference.
So that's the first decision point. We need to decide if we're going to use the emulated eNode B, which seems fine. It seems like the lower hurdle, right? That's a decision point.
Exactly. All these if that you say are what generates to me confusion. Are we going to use either one, the other, or we are sending out a release with both of them and we explain to the user that they can use both of them and they can really do it on their own?
Right. Luca,
It was already taken.
Yeah, but now if you say if you want this or if you want that, right?
So the question is, out of the box, is it going to be an emulated eNote?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the first decision. So if we can identify the decisions, that would be very helpful. So that's one decision. And in fact, maybe this software requirement section, which I hopefully am projecting, sharing screen, is helpful because I see image 1, image 2, image 3, image 4, image 5. Are there choices in here?
We have the Intel side tested with 3 choice, Spirit, Excel, and NG40. So far, they just test with these 3 companies without code. With code, we only test the Spirit. So all the documents are described according the experience with the Spirit. Because that tool never integrated into code so far, we only integrated the experiment so far.
Okay, so leave for a second, we get customizations out, right? Everything is possible. Of course, if we work and we test and so on, everything is possible, right? But out of the box, right? You just say we go for the Pirate emulator, right? So the first assumption, as far as what I'm understanding, is that it's going to be software, no additional hardware is required, right? So in the list of hardware, I should just say, I shouldn't say that probably. I should just simply say you need a traditional cord pod, as you see in the guide, nothing more, right? In the software, probably we'll need to say we will need a Pirate emulator. That's what I'm getting from what you're saying.
The question is, how does someone decide to download mCord and say, I want to experiment with it if they don't have a proprietary license, right? So one of the big problems with Cord in general is I'm curious, I want to try it. Either it's going to take me 5 hours and I have to buy a license, or it's going to take me 5 hours, right?
So totally agree. That was my second question, right? From the hardware was, okay, now that we know that it's Pirate is closed, right?
Yeah, so there isn't we have the same problem in the Cord forever, right? But now finally we have a reference platform that includes hardware and open source software to at least get the basic functionality up and running. I mean, we will have soon with Bolton and the Edge Core OLT. But is there an equivalent for that in mCord? That's the question.
Well, so it may in fact be the case that this first release does still have a proprietary piece in it. And what I'm hoping, and I don't know, is that Spira would be willing to make it available for evaluation purposes. It's going to be a hurdle, but at least it's possible to get there.
I know it sucks, right? It's not the final dreamy result that we want, but it's also true that concretely today there's no another alternative to this, right? I'm happy enough at least to say to the user clearly this, you have to buy A, B, C, right? As a first step.
By the way, it's not just, my understanding is it's not just an emulated eNote B, it's also the emulated traffic that gets put on it. So it's really a traffic generator as much as anything.
What happens if I deploy mCord without it? What do I get as a user?
You get a partial system. Well, you get a, yeah, I can't describe exactly what you get.
Can I create a subscriber and look at the data model through the UI? Kind of see what's created.
Hopefully that.
I think you can do that much.
Andy,
if you go up.
Could you jump in, Andy? Sorry, go ahead.
If you go up in this document to the picture with the boxes and the clouds.
That's every technical diagram ever.
Right, yeah. So this is, I think, the the most concrete picture of what we can reasonably deliver in the next couple of weeks. And so it's got these, boxes connected to the clouds, or these three VMs, and that big one is the Spirent all-in-one RAN plus enemy plus whatever. And then these other two are the Intel VNFs for the rest of the EPC. So my understanding of what we are talking about delivering is the ability to, if you have the license and can set up this license server that you see up here at the top, then you can run this and run traffic through it on a full hardware pod. So, and there's some other steps that are required, for instance, to set up the fabric and setting up the license server. I haven't tried to do that, so I don't know what's involved there.
Andy?
Yes.
So looking at this, there's a big lumpy proprietary emulation piece, but it's lumped into it, the MME and the RAN and other things. We have 2 bits of open source, the user plane and the control plane for the SP gateway. If we come back to here, and I just scrolled up, we also have some other pieces. So we've got, now I lost track of which we had there. We had the S gateway and the user and S gateway control. That's the S gateway user. There's the S gateway control. We're actually, so it's the idea that we'd be modeling and have representation in the control plane for an MME, but that in fact in the service data plane it's implemented by that big lumpy box, and likewise for the virtual HSS.
That's currently not how things are implemented. So this looks like we have a bunch of services in this picture that you're showing right now, but if you go down to the other picture, so the way the profile, the MCord profile that we're using is set up is there's 3 services corresponding to these 3 boxes. So there's the VSP, GWC, and U services, and then another service that is responsible for setting up this big lumpy thing.
Well, okay, so that actually is fine, because in effect, the MME, so what basically has happened in this picture is that the emulated eNode B and the emulated workload that gets put onto it has been bundled with the MME, effectively.
I guess what I'm suggesting.
Larry, I want to say something here. Yes, it is one box together. They have been using this all the time. So when I integrate it into the Cord platform, I also use as it a bundle. And in the plan is in the Q1 of next year, and the Intel and the Sprint will release the MME HSS separately. So at that time, we will not use the MME from Spirent. We will use the real, not use the MME emulator. In the Q1 of next year, we will use the real MME and the HSS and some other components.
So, but that's release 2. That's down the road. Is that right? Or is that planned?
Yes, that's after release 1.
That's after this first release. Okay. So, all right. So this is a picture
Larry,
that. Go ahead.
Larry, what I think I'm trying to suggest is someone, and maybe I'm just way off base, as someone who is curious about the system, I would like to install this system and be able to do some operations like control subscriber, create a subscriber, look at what's there. Even if I don't have the eNode B MME functional, right? I want to just pull it up on my laptop and look at it and play with it a little bit and decide if I want to go to the next step. And the next step might be acquire a demonstration license.
Okay,
or,
good.
License to go with it.
Okay, so good. So that asks.
I can describe without the be what will happen. And because so far we don't have a collaborator want to open source their run, so we only have the EPC collaborator, and only open source the EPC in the mobile world is already a big deal. So the target for the release one is just for the EPC. When we plan it, we didn't include the run. And so for this time, if we disable, I don't want to buy any license. I also don't have any hardware in the V. I just want to run EPC. It also you can set up the end-to-end path, but you can still run. After you run it, on the Xbox UI, you can see all the services. You can log in because the EPC including 2 VMs. You still can log in the 2 VMs and run the data plan, the SP Gateway U, and then run the control plan, SP Gateway C. And then you can say the SP Gateway U can talk to SP Gateway C, which means EPC is ready, waiting for other components to connect. But just then stopped here because we don't have a run to connect to it. But it itself still can work in there. You can still log in, can say, look at the code, look at the logs, look at it is running, look at all the details configurations like this.
So there's another way to approach this, which is that you could, I don't know if David, if this addresses your issue or not, but if you brought up and now I forget what scenario it is. Is it the mock scenario or a single? Single? Well, not single because maybe it's single. But I wanted what used to be called the front end.
Larry, how about if they just emulate the RAN and use the EPC? I mean, we have RAN emulation from NG4T and from Spirent, or one of those companies can give you a VM.
Those are not open source. Yeah.
So they can give you a temporary license. I think.
But so Tom,
do I go through their or I can just download and go?
Right. The fundamental issue here, Tom, is we can't release we need to release something concrete and tangible. It has these 8 components in it. Here's the configuration specification, go. And so having these options, so this is the way Luca put it to Ping Ping. When you say if this or that, we need to resolve those ifs.
Right, but I think our vendors or our collaborators are willing to give us the VM for RAN and have a temporary license for 30 days or whoever installs it from the time. They're working on that. So we should be able to get, anyone can install it, but after 30 days it will expire. You have to call them up to get another key from them.
But do we have that in place that we can build on it in 3 weeks? I think the only answer here, the only feasible answer is a fairly conservative first release. It's a toe in the water. That's my guess.
Tom, for both NG40, XL, or Spartan, they all need a license. And those days, NG40 is not active because some company small, they work on something else. So the Spartan is very active. So this is the only choice so far. So that's why we have been, the Intel also suggest to work with the Sparent in this for the release one. And this is the only possible choice so far, we can say.
Yeah, but I think from Ashok telling us that he's been tested at this functionally, with Spirent, Ixia, and NG4T. So his environment does work with all 3 different vendors, 3 different test companies. So
Tom?
As I said before, the NG40 works with Intel. They showed a lot of demos, but without code. When we integrated the NG40 into code, we needed to rebuild the image and test it in code environment. But the NG40 company in this recently, they're busy with something else, so they can't support us. That's why we switched to Sparent for the release one.
So why don't we have a meeting with all 3 of them and just say this is what we are trying to do within 3 weeks? Which one can they support?
We have been talking about this recent 2 months, even before code build. Ashok right now work with Sparent every day and with work with online team. They just I can send you the emails. You can say what we talked about. This is what I mean. So far, this is the only choice.
We've got to get to the point with all the flavors of Cord where I no longer have to build if I just want to look at it. I can go to AWS, I can go to whatever, press a button, deploy in the cloud, and be up and running and look at it in 15 minutes. Otherwise, it takes too long for people to get interested and too frustrating for people to get interested. And that's not just Cord, that's all of them.
David, I think we're pretty close right now with that in terms of being able to bring up a just sort of a mock or a front end. If that's what you're looking for, if you're looking at for like a full pod, then obviously we're not. But
I would call it a functional mock in the sense where the pieces are there and I can kind of explore the pieces, but it doesn't actually have to pass traffic in the case of our Cord or any of it, right?
Right.
All right, so I agree that's the goal or a goal. So
are we getting closer to it?
We're getting closer to it, but it's above what we're trying to jump now for Cord. And the problem for me with Cord is we have a lot of demos and what I just heard the phrase functional tests, but what we don't have is integration. And trying to understand of all the options that have been tested and available in various ways, which ones can we pick and choose to do an integrated thing? What's the best integrated thing that we can produce?
So fortunately or unfortunately at this point, I think the only possible thing to do, as far as I can tell, no worries, they hear me even if the mic is there. The only possible option we can follow is this one of the Spirent emulator, right? Like it or not. I mean, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, Andy or Pimping. Do you think in 2 weeks we can do anything else than this?
No, I think when the time available, this is what we need to focus on.
All right. So what I would like to ask is, I'm sorry, Luca, what I would like to ask is that this is what we focus on then. And the other options, as wonderful as they are, get put on the back burner for right now. We're really going to need all hands on this, I think, to get it done.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's a little bit of clarity, even if it's not the best answer.
So my next question would be, assuming what we deliver is the Spirent emulator, how far we concretely are from there. So from today, I'll start from myself. From today, I'll start with this document and I'll start to put together a documentation for the user, right? Which again, is not just a documentation, it's something all the team should start to follow, because if we repeat those steps, in theory, we should arrive to a consistent result at the end of those steps.
Yes, and
so,
Luca,
in that, we are ready to deliver, right?
Luca, I like that way of looking at it, and treat this as that document, because that was the intent here, is that it was the Cord team's draft of what you had put together, or what had also been recently put together for Cord.
Yeah.
And
so, but
yeah, so there's the installation piece of it, and then there's the, well, what are the
configuration, yeah.
Yeah. What's the software configuration? What's the hardware configuration?
Yeah. So, but my question is, other than that, how far we really are from delivering this? Because it's going to be less than 2 weeks, right? Maybe at this point.
So let's assume that the hardware isn't terribly hard. This is mostly a software issue. Andy, what's your take on where the software is?
Right, so this is a picture of the Cord Spirent profile. So you can bring up this profile on, say, a Cord in a box, and you'll see these VMs and all these networks get spun up, or at least the three, like the big lumpy one and the other to on the right. Those VMs will get spun up. There's not the license server stuff. That's not part of the profile right now. All these things are running, I believe, the correct software, although maybe there's some changes that need to happen on the SPDWU component, because that is where the data plane is that's not completely working right now. The big lumpy thing, we are working on the synchronizer that configures that. It's not quite working, but I'm actively looking at that right now, and so I'm hoping maybe by the end of the day we'll get that piece up and running. But then in terms of what happens next, like how do you actually generate some traffic and run it through this setup and observe that something is actually working, that is still not clear in my mind. Like, what is the next step?
The next, I guess, from traffic generation perspective.
I think I like the idea. I don't know who suggested just now. Indeed, if you really want to use like the emulator, to my experience, because I already set up it in our lab. So to my experience, it still needs some time to learn how to set up the emulator and give some special connectivity. And so I think the basic idea is when people bring up a pod, just by a click, everything is up. With some VM, with the EPC VMs, they can log in, they can play with also with XY GUI. They can do these basic things. If they want to do further, then they maybe need to buy the license and or maybe buy the hardware USB. But at least we want to the user just after one click, they can see what the M code looks like and feel what the what the EPC looks like and feel the GUI. I think the first idea I really like is this part. Then based on this, they can, if they want to go further, they can go to buy license or buy the hardware USB like this.
Thank you. How do we generate traffic? How does Ashok generate traffic for you?
If you want to use emulator can generate the traffic. If you want to use real USB, you can use by a phone. The phone can generate the traffic.
Yeah, I think the question was, do we know concretely how to do it?
Yeah.
So I know it's an emulator, but does someone internally have the knowledge on how to do this?
Yes, yes. With the emulator, we already showed the demo in Cord Build with the video. If you want to look at it, I can show it again how to generate traffic. They will first, as Larry said, except the emulator, the USB, MME, there's a traffic generator inside. You can generate the traffic, and then you can see the packet, how many packets you send, how many packets will receive. You can see all the details.
Okay. So, sorry, I know I talk too much today, as usual, but it's important to me to understand what's going on, really. Final story. You have a normal fabric, no other equipment. You just download the Cord repository, you use the profile mcord. When you deploy that, you should have the entire EPC, a traffic emulator, no license server. The license server should be somewhere else, still not clear if physical or in the cloud, whatever, for now. And everything should be already done and working. I should go somewhere, do a ping, everything works. This is what we should have in 10 days, 2 weeks. Nothing else.
Yes, yes. Let me, can someone explain, or maybe Andy, can you explain the gap between this picture and this picture? I'm sorry, I'm looking at the two graphs. Because from a profile point of view, we've got all these individual pieces called out, but it is literally just these 1, 2, 3 pieces that will be visible to services. For example, is there an EPC as a service?
So EPC as a service, that may be a question for Sapin. I don't know if EPC as a service has been integrated into this profile, but I think it could be.
Okay, so that's a
So
separate.
right now,
The EPC and is there Sapa is there? If Sapa is there?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Thinking.
Yes.
So,
Okay. Let Sapa explain.
well, okay. So, virtual EPC as a service is something that we demoed in the last session of the Cord track at Cord Build. What it does is implement service chaining in general, and for these Cord services specifically at the XOS level. So it gives you the ability to essentially bring up these this entire service chain together in one step and configure it rather than bringing up the services individually. And so this is not integrated with the Cord Spirent profile, which I guess is what we're going to use, but we're a short step away from that.
Okay, so it could. So we've got a plan A and we've got a plan B or A prime that, time permitting, this could be the additional thing. I'm going back to what we were originally targeting, which was a base configuration of these open source SP gateways plus a virtualized EPC. So if that's there, and hopefully it's orthogonal, it can happen independent of the other, and it either makes it or it doesn't, but it doesn't slow anything else down. Is that right?
Yeah, the only step I can think of there is just adding the service to the Cord Spirent profile. I think it works. So I can't think of any major to-dos in that service.
All right. If we get there, we will have delivered on what we originally, during planning, targeted. We may come up, but that we have a lower risk thing that we can do here seems good.
Yeah, and one of the things it lets you do is it makes the service chain configurable via this blueprints thing that we talked about. So this service chain isn't hard-coded into the EPC service. You can add a new service chain to the configuration file and potentially support multiple service chains. Should be
so from a service chain
kind of.
So Sapin, from a service chain point of view, though, we don't have a whole lot of chain here. So I understand you're working at the modeling level, and now the point at which that touches these VNFs, is this the right back end to demonstrate that? Or even if it's an overly simplified one, if it is demonstratable, it's perhaps interesting.
So there are three. Yeah, there are three parts to this, right? Chaining things at the modeling level, which of course works pretty well. The second part is plumbing that chaining, that modeling down to the synchronizer level. So making sure that things come up in the right order and dependencies are taken into consideration, and synchronizers are blocked until everything preceding a given service in a service chain has been brought up. And the third part is the actual network plumbing. And my understanding is that's kind of what we were going to look at with the SDN controller service. So and I don't know if you're going to go down that path, but one of the things we talked about with Ping Ping was adding an SDN controller service to this EPC chain. And so that would become a second blueprint, where essentially the SDN controller service would give the SP Gateway C and SP Gateway U access to ONOS. And
so that's not in this picture. It's an extra piece. And I understand why that might be a more interesting target for the virtualized EPC nested service mechanism. But what does it add? If I strip that away and I just look at the data plane, what does it add? or where does it go?
Or if you strip, I'm sorry, if you strip the
If you strip the models
SDN
away and just looked at the data plane, and I'm looking at this picture of VMs and virtual networks, where does this SDN controller thing go?
Well, I guess it's just a box adjacent to SP. So both the SP Gateway C and SP Gateway U get connectivity to that. But maybe Ping can add to that.
Yes. The SDN controller is just inside between the SP Gateway C and SP Gateway U. It will not. So if without it, these two components talk to each other directly. With it, they just talk through this component. So nothing will change. Just whether has it or not has it, it will work. And for the original plan of the release, this is the optional choice when we plan the release one. So you didn't say it in the you didn't say it in the picture because that's I drawn for the I made it drawn for the cloud build. That's why the SD controller was not showing that.
Okay, so back to the other service graph picture. The SP Gateway controller is that box that sits between C.
Yeah, I think that's right, Larry.
Okay. All right. So we have two secondary things that might happen. One of which is that we get the nested services with the virtualized EPC, which then controls the other services. And the second thing that might happen and might not is that we insert a box in the middle.
Yeah, can you draw down about to see the next picture? Yeah, here. You can see there's the SP Gateway network here. If the SDN controller exists, it will sit between on this network here. So SP Gateway C and U will not talk directly. It will talk through the arms here.
Right in the middle there. Yep. All right. So it's an extremely rough plan, but it has some pieces, which we go with the spirate, we go with the lumpy box. Luca understands where we want to take the installation guide. We have this mostly working, and that's our baseline. We can add, if it gets done, the nested virtualized EPC, and we can add the SD controller between these two boxes to make that nested thing more interesting. And but both of those are separable, and we aren't dependent upon those to get something together. We're nearly out of time.
I think that's right.
Okay. We're nearly out of time.
I think, yeah.
Go. Sorry.
Oh, just the high level summary is my understanding is we're trying to release this picture, so that basically means release the demo that Ping and the mCord team did at Cord Build and let other people reproduce that demo. That's essentially the target here. Does that sound right?
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, we're trying to make that releasable so it's reproducible. And we've got a couple of potential enhancements that are partly done and might make it, but we don't depend on them. All right, thanks everybody. We really need to stay on top of this. So this is the document where this is going to be happening, and I would just like to ask everyone to, keep track on this. From a swarming engineering point of view, we just may need more people pulled into it, so be prepared for that. But this is what we're trying to pull together. Anything else?
So Larry, should we meet with Spirent to make sure that they can do something with the licensing, or they can?
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Orthogonal this, we need a process by which other people can get the license in a fairly straightforward manner. This is not unique. We're going to have these kind of situations where we have licensed software, but we need to make it easy for people to go get those evaluation licenses.
Right. And it could be that they can lower the number of UEs they can generate to maybe 10 or 20, and then when they get serious, then they have to go pay for the license.
Okay. Anything else?
So far we haven't talked about at least all the technical to me how to deal with the license. For example, how to contact parents directly, how to buy it, what the price is, we haven't decided on all the details. We only need, if we want to really run the traffic end to end, it needs a license. So far, it only comes to this step. I think when we release, we can maybe have say the EPC is used because it's a standard, so it's a interface. So in zero, it can work with hardware, you can use other emulator. And but we should list, we only tested parent so far, like this. I think in the document we should say it clearly. Without license, you can do something what you can try. With license, what you can do, you can run any traffic. Without license, you can just still say what the EPC looks like. Then in the second step, you can integrate your run or use our emulation.
Okay, so thank you. Let's shut down the call. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.